Finally, in SEAL training, there's a bell. All you have to do to quit is ring the bell. Ring the bell, and you no longer have to wake up at 5 o'clock. Ring the bell, and you no longer have to do the runs, the obstacle course, the PT, and you no longer have to endure the hardships of training. If you want to change the world, don't ever, ever ring the bell.
You are listening to the Kill the Quit podcast hour presented by Kill Clip Performance Drinks.
Enjoy drinking Kill Clip after sweaty workouts, big rides, full rounds, long days, longer nights, or whenever you feel the need to get back up to full speed.
Kill Clip Performance Drinks for Warriors. Ignite, endure, recover. And now, Mark Zinno.
Welcome into the Kill Clip podcast. I am your host, Mark Zinno. Our guest this week is WWE superstar Sarah Logan. She has had an amazing professional. Yeah, there you go. She's had an amazing professional career. Really excited to hear your story. So, Sarah, thank you so much for joining us.
Oh, thank you guys for having me. I love y'all's product, and I've been following y'all's story, your guys' story for a while now, too.
Oh, great. So, I don't know how many young girls grow up with the aspiration of being a WWE superstar. So, I'm curious as to how this all comes about. Were you an athletic child? Did you like sports, or how'd you get into this kind of wrestling world?
Yeah, I played sports all through elementary school, middle school, and high school. I played everything, it seems like, but soccer. And I obviously wrestled in school. And but being a professional wrestler where I was from, I'm from Louisville, Kentucky, where wrestling is really big, and it had some famous wrestling buildings in Louisville. So wrestling has been there forever, and it was never really it never seemed like a goal I could achieve. It was just too big. So I should watch wrestling with my grandma every Monday, and we would get all into it. And I never had the thought, man, I would love to do this one day. They were untouchable. They were superheroes. So it wasn't until I went to independent wrestling shows in my area, and then I saw wow, I could actually kind of do this. And it just took off from there.
All right, let me kind of just give you the 30,000-foot view from, somebody who's not from Kentucky. One, it's like when you said you wrestled as a kid, did you do it organized in middle school and high school and everything?
Yeah, I did freestyle wrestling in middle school mostly. I did I did some camps and stuff in elementary school. But softball kind of took over my career in high school. And I just kind of focused on softball and diving. I wasn't, even though Kentucky is with the times, I guess, there wasn't a lot of girl wrestlers on the team. I was the only one.
Right.
So my dad didn't like that very much.
That's
so
what I was going to ask you.
In high school.
Were you wrestling against all boys?
Yeah. There wasn't any girls on the team when I was in it. Some girls would come to support their boyfriends or their brothers or stuff, but and I grew up with 4 brothers, so it kind of felt natural, I guess.
Right. I mean, you never were intimidated by the fact that there were all boys in that sport.
No, I actually didn't really have an understanding that I'm the only girl in the group until I got to middle school. So in elementary school, I wrestled and I played baseball, t-ball. And I remember learning that when I went to middle school, I would have to play softball. And I remember just being taken back, why do I have to play just a girl game? Why can't I play? I'm good at baseball. Why can't I just keep playing baseball? And it was a big thing I couldn't really wrap my mind around, especially at that age, where boys and girls are kind of, physically, running around playing baseball, stuff like that. They're kind of the same, except until they get older, where guys start getting really stronger than the girls and stuff like that.
Yeah, I mean it's crazy to think that you were so unassuming that you didn't look around. And I guess that's what kids are. They don't really recognize the difference between boy sports and girl sports and everything else. Your parents never tried to deter you away from wrestling, saying that's might be a little too dangerous or anything like that?
No, I have, I said, I have 4 brothers, and I'm the only athlete in my family.
Really?
So
what do your brothers do?
I have 3 brothers. My dad was a Marine, so
okay.
I have 3 stepbrothers from the Philippines, and then I have 1 half brother my stepbrothers from the Philippines one's in the Army, and he's like a computer guy in the Army, and the other two work on cars. And my younger brother is like, he builds computers. So I've been bigger than them since I was like 12.
Oh, wow. So that makes a lot of sense then. Okay, so
yeah. So like my dad never, he was never like, this sport's for boys and this sport's for girls. He's like, you're good at sports, go play. There was no more questions asked.
So as you get into high school and everything else, you mentioned softball took over. Was there anything pulling you back to wrestling? I mean, were you still just a fan of WWE at that point in time?
Yeah, so I went to a concert with a band called Head PE, and there was a band there called Twisted, which is signed with like the Insane Clown Posse like crew, and they were talking about wrestling. And I was like, man, wrestling, like I haven't like watched a pro wrestling, like, cause I really like the Attitude Era, and that's when like my first ever like crush with a girl was Stone Cold Steve Austin, and I was like, wow, wrestling, and the wrestling they did was hardcore wrestling, so it was like thumbtacks and light tubes and barbed wire and all this crazy stuff, and I went to the show. It was like a local, I was like, where is the show? Because I was probably an hour outside of where I lived, and it was in my town that I lived in. Wow. And I was like, wow, like I can't not go. So I ended up going, and it just like blew my mind. I was like, I'm gonna get hurt. I can do this. And I just was so persistent and so like just in your face about wanting to be a wrestler. And I would drive 14 hours. I would drive 16 hours. I would drive for no money. I killed like 4 cars. Just, there was something that like, my soul and my heart knew that like, this is what I was supposed to do. So there was no other choice.
Awesome. So did you ever think about college? I mean, was that a plan for you? Did you want to be a collegiate softball player, or did you just get linear focused at this point and now I'm going to be a wrestler?
So softball, like I said, I played all my life, and I was a catcher. And I loved being a catcher, and another girl that I kind of moved around. I was in the Kentucky area, but I moved schools a lot. We moved like almost every year. And when I went to the new school, there was already a catcher there. And she was good. Like we were like not like the same like athletic capabilities. And she was vetted in. She was the one who knew the team. She was the one that knew the coaches, and I just had to play like shortstop and third base, which is fine, but like that was my position. And I kind of got like, man, if I can't catch, like that's how I fell in love with the sport, was catching. Like I've been catching for 12 years at this point. And so I started trying to find like other things to do. I started swimming for a little while, and then swimming was so tiresome. I was so hungry every day of my life. So I started diving. I was good at diving, and but like wrestling, just like there's nothing else in the world like it. Like the athleticism, the acting, the intensity, the chase of like being an independent wrestler and like trying to make it is just it's addicting. It is.
So you graduate high school in 2011, right? And you go right into the independent circuit. Is that kind of how it went?
Yeah. So I was a great student. I took a lot of AP classes, and I got a lot of college credits lined up through the AP tests. And my dad was like pretty much asking me, like, what are you going to do when you graduate high school? And I got an opportunity to go to Japan for wrestling.
Japan?
And this opportunity, so I was in contact with this girl, and she was like, if you get yourself to Japan, I could live at the dojo in Japan, and I could train for 3 or 4 months. And Japanese wrestling has like a certain style, just kind of like, if you go to Mexico, they box different than they box in Brazil, like stuff like that. So I loved Japanese style wrestling. So I was like, man. And they told me the date they wanted me to come. It was 4 days after I graduated. At this point, I'm a small town girl from Kentucky. I had never been on a plane before. Never even been to the airport before. so, but there was no, like, am I going to do this? Am I not going to do this? I was like, I'm going to do this. So I told my dad I was going to Japan. He thought it was a mistake, like, because I was a good student. I was a good athlete. Like, why was I, kind of throwing all that I worked for away just to go do this? But I'm hard-headed, and I had been working at a animal hospital. I volunteered 13 and 14. I started working there when I was 15. So I just saved all the money from I worked at the animal hospital, and I put on gutter helmets as like a side job.
Wow. And so
I saved up money, and I went to Japan. Yeah.
That you paid for the ticket alone. Your parents didn't help you at all.
No, I come from my dad's a truck driver. He was a Marine. He's a truck driver now, and we kind of lived paycheck to paycheck. And like I said, we moved a lot, so like there wasn't. I couldn't bring it upon myself to ask my dad for that much money.
Sure. Do you remember what the ticket cost?
By the time I bought the ticket, well, so before I went to school, it was $1,200.
Okay.
I was like, okay, I got it, no problem. I'll buy it when I get home. Because I didn't know how airline tickets fluctuate in prices every hour. So I came home, and it was like $1,400, and my heart dropped. I was like, I've been working almost a year and a half, 2 years to save up $1,200. How am I supposed to get an extra $200 in a span of now?
Right.
But luckily, I had a friend called Waffle Man in high school, and he had been graduated for like a year or so now. And I asked him, I was like, hey man, can I borrow $200? And he probably was his last $200, and he gave it to me, so I was able to go.
Wow, what a gesture.
Yeah, it was. I was sure being like, this guy's like saving me right now.
Do you still talk to him?
Yeah. I paid him his money back plus interest. I still talk to him. I still I try to keep touch with as much of my friends in high school as I can. I'm still friends with a lot of them.
That's pretty amazing. All right, so you get into Japan and you have this plan to train for 3 or 4 months. What is that like?
So up until this point, and besides like sports, like working out, like I never really like worked out before.
Okay.
So I went to Japan, and it was 3 months of like intense training. So I wake up at like training was from 8 a.m. to noon for the Kaientai dojo training. So it was like I trained with boys during the morning, and then from like 4 p.m. to like 8 p.m., maybe sometimes later, I trained with these girls from Mexico at a company called CMLL, because they were there actually wrestling for the company, not just training. So I was training so much, and I went to Japan with I'm not joking you, $20.
Really?
And I would buy bread and butter and jelly. That's what I lived off of for ever. And sometimes a lot of the girls from CMLL, they would see that I was just eating these butter and jelly sandwiches, and they would like make me like spicy spaghetti, or they would like let me in on their dinner sometimes, which was really cool. But I started losing so much like weight that my body didn't know what to do with itself.
Did you ever at any point in time stop and think like, this is crazy, what am I doing?
There was a point when I landed in Japan. Like I said, my first time ever on an airplane. I took a 14-hour flight to Japan. And I get off the plane, and there's this little Japanese dude with a sign that I can tell it's my name, but it's spelled all kinds of wrong. And I looked at him, and I'm like, I'm about to get in this car with this dude and just hope for the best. And, like, I grew up, like, me and my dad would go to, like a store, and we would sit down, and he'd give me about 10 minutes, and, like, he would be like, how many windows are in here? How many exits? Are there kids? Are there stairs? Like, if someone came in the store, what would you do? And I would have to answer all these things. And if I could, he would find me, like, an extra whatever. So, like, my paranoid-ass brain is going off the handle. And I'm, like, I'm thinking, like, what am I going to do? Is this guy trying to take me somewhere I don't want to go? And, like, so at that point, I was like, what am I doing? But once I got to where I was going, I was okay. Japan's such a laid-back and, like, well-mannered country. Like, if I would get lost on the trains, like, someone would miss their train to help me find mine. Like, everyone was so nice.
That's the opposite of America
I'm
these
sure
days.
I got like I'm sure I got like a false sense of like, 'cause when I started traveling more, I'm like, people aren't this nice normally. Because where I grew up, everyone kind of knows you. When you drive by people, they wave at you. If a cop's down the road, someone will flash their lights at you. Like, everyone's just nice.
Interesting.
So I went to Japan, and I was like, oh, I guess everyone's just nice everywhere.
You're getting a real bad perception of what the rest of the world was.
I know.
Right? So 4 months there, you're losing weight. You're trying to stay in shape. Like, what's all the process like now? How do you end up finishing up your time in Japan?
So I started working like their dojo shows. Like they would have like 5 people or like 10, 15 people come to these dojo shows. They would watch like the rookies like myself wrestle. And I remember luckily I had like a sports bra on underneath my shirt. So I was wrestling this girl from Mexico, and she was like awesome, and it's Princess Suhe. And I'm eating the mat every time she like hits me. I'm going above and beyond everything I can do to make this match fantastic. And I was supposed to do a crossbody off the top rope, so it's where you jump on the top rope and you jump off and land on the girl. And when I went up to the top rope, my zipper on my shirt just busted and fell off.
Wardrobe malfunction is the appropriate term, right?
Oh my gosh, I could have died right there. I was mortified. Like I had a sports bra. It was like okay, but at this point I was like, whoa. And I was on the top rope for all the world to see with no shirt on. And it was terrible. But I got through that. And I left Japan, and like I'd worked so hard, and I guess my matches were good enough that the next 2 times I went to Japan, they paid for my ticket, they paid for my visa, and they like paid for me a place to live, gave me grocery money. Like I was treated a lot different.
Wow.
When my second and third time back to Japan.
She is WWE superstar Sarah Logan. We come back, her beginning of the professional wrestling career in the United States, and Crazy Mary Dobson. You'll find out what that means coming up next here on the Kill Cliff podcast. We'll be right back.
You're listening to the Kill the Quit podcast hour, presented by Kill Cliff Performance Drinks.
Kill Cliff, performance drinks for warriors to get you up, get you through, and get you back to full speed.
And now, back to the show with host Mark Zinno.
Welcome back to the Kill Cliff podcast. I'm your host, Mark Zinno. This week's guest is WWE superstar Sarah Logan. When we last left off, Sarah was finishing her time in Japan and coming back to the United States to begin her wrestling career. Now, you mentioned you started on the independent circuit. Kind of just give everybody the background on what that is and how you come across it.
So independent wrestling is like a subculture of the world that's huge and not a lot of people know about.
Yeah.
And it's going to be in every state. It's going to be if you go to like a major city, wherever you are, you will find an independent wrestling show.
Really?
And it could be pretty much. It could be a fantastic show. It could be a terrible show that you can just go to and go with your friends and enjoy the ridiculousness of it. So how you get booked as like an independent wrestler. So I would go to a place, I would get a phone number, I would get their MySpace at the time, I would get their Facebook, and I'd write the promoter and be like, and I would put my case to them. So I was handling all my bookings. Like personally, I would handle how much I got paid, I would handle how much what my match was going to be about. I would handle if I was getting paid for if I was getting paid gas money, if I was getting paid a flight, if I would get a hotel when I was there. But a lot of the times, starting out, I would just drive there, wrestle, and then hope I would get paid, and then either like sleep in my car or try to drive home. But my first place wrestling was in Nitro, West Virginia, and the hills and the cities and like all in West Virginia are just crazy to drive in and crazy to live in. And being in West Virginia didn't leave off on the best of terms.
Well, your first wrestling match in independent circuit was under the name Crazy Mary Dobson. So how do you come up with that name?
So the person who kind of first took me under their wing gave me that name. And I had that name. I had the crazy part to it is because I did hardcore wrestling. I would wrestle in like thumbtacks and barbed wire and mouse traps and light tubes, and I would just do insane things, and that's what made me crazy.
What? Wait,
Like,
hold on. You wrestled on thumbtacks and barbed wire?
Yeah, it was crazy. Like I said, that was the first independent wrestling show I ever saw. It was like a hardcore show. So I was like, I could do this, so I went and did it.
But how do you? What, they put thumbtacks all over the ring and you just wrestle on it?
Well, it's so like usually you start out, so like even if it's a hardcore match, there's like storytelling in it because it's wrestling. So like if we just gave you the thumbtacks right off the bat, you would kind of be like, there's no build to it. So we would like, you kind of start off with like a normal wrestling match and like graduate to the thumbtacks. So usually it would be like, you put them on like a table and you would slam someone through the table, or like I would spread them out and like put someone's face in it and kick their face, and just. And however, you can be creative with it. There's no right or wrong way to do it.
Okay, I'll take your word for it. Let me ask you at this point on the independent circuit. I mean, look, if at the highest level there's a certain amount of choreography to all this, how much choreography is there to the independent circuit?
I guess we're stuntmen that have like one take, so you just kind of get in there and you'll have like a story you want to tell, but since you only have one take, that story 9 times out of 10 gets messed up. And that's where like the professionalism of wrestling comes out, is adapting to what's happening in the ring, adapting to what's happening to the crowd, adapting to if you get hurt, if I get hurt, if the ring breaks, if a dog runs in the ring, if a fan runs in the ring and tries to fight you, like you always have in mind like the story you want to tell. But how you get to point A of that story and point B are two totally different things.
So how long does Crazy Mary Dobson last?
She lasted longer than I think she should have. So I independent wrestled for like 4 almost 5 years, and I started wrestling around the world. Like since I was a girl that looked like I did, especially when I was 18, I looked like I was 16. So I was doing all these crazy matches, and I looked like I was a little girl. And so I got flown to Scotland, I got flown to England, I got flown to Canada, Mexico, Germany, like everywhere. And I was doing these insane matches. And I was like, this is great. Like, I can do this forever. But when I started being like, hey, like, I'm getting these chances to do extra stuff with WWE, I'm getting these chances to do all this stuff, and, like, I didn't want, like, young girls to see me doing all that stuff, Like, I didn't think WWE would see me as a very, like, PG wrestler if I was bleeding and doing all this stuff on, like, everywhere like I was. So I was like, man, maybe I need to stop doing all these insane matches, because I could wrestle.
Mm-hmm.
Because I had that solid wrestling foundation from freestyle wrestling and from training in Japan. Like, I had that solid foundation that I just hadn't really got to use yet. And I started trying out, like, just doing regular matches without all the weapons in it. And it went really well. But then I was like, damn, like, how am I crazy now? So I had this name, and I was just a normal wrestler. And I was like, damn it. So I started doing, like, kind of a Viking crazy. Because my dad is Asatru, which is, like, for lack of a better term, like the Viking religion. And I'd grown up with all these Viking stories and all this like Norse mythology based religious realism that my dad had like taught me when I was a kid. So I was like, well, maybe I could just kind of be a berserker. So that's kind of what I started trying to portray when I no longer would get crushed in the face with light shoots anymore.
All right, a couple of questions here. Let's stick with this whole, personality and morphing into what you are and who you want to be and how much what you want to portray, so to speak. That I assume is kind of like a living, breathing thing, or do you kind of go into each match or a period of time saying, this is who I am, this defines my identity as a wrestler?
I guess like anything in wrestling, even independent or even WWE, everything's like situational. I was fortunate enough to where I was getting booked doing what I wanted to do. I was getting booked to be in the character I wanted to be, no matter what I chose to be. A lot of people will get, not a lot of people, but some people will get gimmicks that they're like, the wrestling promoters like, this is what I want you to do. If you don't do this gimmick, we don't really want you anymore.
Okay.
So it was nice that like even with WWE, like I'm able to portray. I don't do it as like as much as I did on the Indies, but I'm able to like portray like my Viking roots and stuff on TV, and like I presented that to WWE, and I told them this is who I was, and they're like, awesome, go show the world, which was an amazing feeling to be like, oh, who I am is awesome, sweet. That's great.
All right. Throughout this time in the independent wrestling world, how much do you get injured? Are you ever hurt? Do you ever miss a match? What physical condition is your body in? Because again, at this point, what are you, only 18, 19 years old?
Right, yeah, like no health insurance, nothing.
Yeah.
One time I hurt my shoulder really bad. Like I didn't go to the doctor, obviously, to get it checked out. But like I remember I hurt it one night, and the next day I was supposed to drive 10 hours to Canada. And I knew my shoulder was messed up, and I went to sleep, and I woke up, and I physically couldn't lift myself up out of my bed. Like, I didn't know that there were so many shoulder muscle workings to just pick your torso up.
Wow.
So I was like, damn, like, so I had to call the Canadian promoter and was like, not only can I not get out of bed, I don't think I can drive 10 hours, and I definitely don't think I can wrestle. And that was the first kind of wrestling booking I canceled because of an injury.
Now, does that make you nervous? Because it's money, right? Like, if you don't show up, you don't get paid.
Absolutely. Like, if, I was living in, like, as far as ghettos in Louisville go, I was living in the ghetto of Louisville, and, like, I was barely making my rent as it is. And it's kind of a thing, like, I just had to figure out, I'm like, well, maybe I can sell more. I would sell, like, 8x10s and like, wrestling merch online, and I would have to, like, try to hustle that, or I would have to try to see if I could do anything just to kind of make it to where I didn't get kicked out of my house.
That's insane.
And then one time I got 12 stitches in my forehead. So like if you can't, I healed up pretty well. The doctor did a great job, but I had a light tube hit my head one time, and it just split me open from like hairline to like eyebrow.
Man.
And it's weird, but like the cool thing is, like, I was messed up, right? Like I had thumbtacks in me, like my head split, but I'm bleeding. But I had like a moment in the match where like it was like a downtime, I was just like I was like just sitting in the ring, like looking at my hands, and I was like, I'm okay. Like despite being cut up and going through what I just went through, like I had a moment where like, but I'm okay. And that was like the rush for me, I guess, to be able to like go through hell and back and like survive and be okay was the cool part for me. But I got those stitches, and they made me wear a beanie at work for like a week and a half.
Mm-hmm.
But
at no
that
point
one was just like a superficial injury.
At no point are you ever thinking to yourself, this isn't worth it. I'm not making any money. I'm getting beat up. My body's in bad shape. I'm tired. I'm exhausted. I'm broke. I'm poor. None of this ever makes you want to quit.
So I would do, like, I never just wrestled. I would always have, like, other jobs. And I think at one point I was wrestling. I was working at a place called English Muffin. I was working at GameStop, and I was putting on gutter helmets. So I totally had 3 jobs. And I started doing a lot of extra stuff with WWE, and I even had like a WWE tryout. And WWE wrote me, and they were like, not at this, like, we're not going to hire you at this time, but like, we're definitely still looking at you. And, to the normal person, that's like, don't call us, we'll call you kind of thing.
Right.
And I was like, damn it. Like my little heart got crushed. I was like, what am I going to do? And so I was 23, and I was 22. And I decided that, like, I can't wait on wrestling. Like, I'm going to try to find a good job that I could still wrestle with. And so I went to, there was a road in my town, and if you're still on the road, you could see the police headquarters and the firefighter headquarters right next to each other. And I stood in front of the civilians, and I'm like, I'm going to do one of these. And I like helping people, but I find that I only really enjoy helping people when they really need it.
Okay.
So I was like, to me, that sounds like a firefighter. So I walked in. I literally walked into the firehouse and was like, I want a job here. So I spent a better part of a year, like, preparing for my CPAP test, preparing for the written test, just kind of going and seeing what the firefighters did every day. And because I was a girl, I tested well. I got put on, like, the top of the hire list. And eventually I got hired on as a correctional firefighter. And I was doing that. I worked, the firefighter schedule, you can only work 4 days a week, and I had weekends off. So I was like, great, I can do this. I can still wrestle, and it'll all be great. And 3 months after I got hired on as a firefighter, my WWE contract showed up in the mail.
That is insanity.
So
You had no idea it was coming, though?
That it'll be in the future.
But you had no idea it was coming, though, right?
No, I just, so I lived with, in order to be a correctional firefighter, I had to live in Indiana. I couldn't live in Kentucky. So my pap lived in Sellersburg, Indiana, which is right next to Clarksville. And I was living at my pap's for, like, that month because I had just moved to the new state. And he called me and was like, you got this big package in the mail. I was like, who's it from? He's like, WWE. I was like, well, shit, open it. He's like, I think they're offering you a job. And I was like, drive that contract to the firehouse right now. So he came, and my fire chief, because I lived in the Louisville, Kentuckiana area, was a big wrestling fan. And he said, you have till you're 36 years old to come back and work here. Go do that.
Man, that's awesome. Now, the contract, I know that you made a couple of appearances, with non-speaking roles. Was that while you were under contract? Is that how it started for you?
No, that was when I was an extra.
Okay.
So anytime WB was, what I thought driving distance was like 6 hours. I drove to some of their things that were like 14 hours away, but normally if they were within 6 hours of me, I would write WB and be like, hey, if you guys need an extra girl, I'll be there. And 9 times out of 10, they said yes. So I was just in their face constantly. Like, I would drive anywhere, and I would just be there, and I would do a bunch of little things for WB. I would be a rosebud. I was a Mrs. I would just do little things, and I, had a good feeling while I was there. Like, I felt like I was supposed to be there, and everyone would be like, are you hired yet? And I'm like, not yet, but I will be.
That's amazing. She is a WWE superstar, Sarah Logan, joining us on the Kill Cliff podcast. When we come back, you heard the beginnings of her WWE career. Next, the explosion. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back.
You are listening to the Kill the Quit podcast hour, presented by Kill Cliff Performance Drinks, proud partner of the Navy SEAL Foundation.
Welcome back to the Kill Cliff podcast. Once again, I'm your host, Mark Zinno. This week's guest is WWE superstar Sarah Logan. When we last left off, Sarah had just gotten her WWE contract in the mail. So when you open up this envelope and you get it in your hands and you start to read it, what are the emotions that are going through you?
It was so surreal. I knew there were these feelings I was supposed to be having, but my brain was like, this isn't real. It's not happening. And I'm reading through it, and WWE pays their superstars very well.
That was going to be my first question. Are you relieved? No more crappy hotels, no more, butter and jelly sandwiches, no, actual legitimate work and salary and a nice pillow and a warm bed and everything else.
Yeah, absolutely. And WWE is a great place to work for. They take care of you. And I just, knowing that I was going to go to this company, and I knew I wouldn't get fired through lack of do something I did, right? Mm-hmm. I knew that I was going to go through this company, and I was going to do my best to grow, and I was going to do my best to be the best employee WWE had ever had. And I knew that in WWE there's so much room to grow. So I got hired on to NXT, which is WWE's developmental company. It's where superstars they want to see grow into WWE superstars go to train. So I went, and that involved moving to Florida. And like I said, never left my little, I've always lived in the Kentuckiana area. And so I had to pick up and move to Florida. And the guy I was dating at the time, which is now my husband, fronted me the money to actually, because I moved down early because I wanted to kind of get everything settled. I wanted to get comfortable in the area before I started working there. So he fronted me the money, and we moved to Florida, and I started training at NXT every day. And to me, it was like training in Japan. I was like, I know this. I'm good at this. And I went every day and trained and just literally worked my ass off. And I think WWE saw that, and that's why I kind of am where I am today.
Crazy. So on November 21st, 2017, you make your debut on SmackDown.
Yeah, it was crazy.
What is the biggest difference between SmackDown and anything you did in NXT and NXT to independent wrestling circuits on thumbtacks?
So NXT is kind of like high school, right?
Okay.
Everything's real personal. You're told this is where you need to be. This is how long you need to be there. This is what you need to wear. All that stuff. WWE is going from high school to corporate office in one day. And how I found out I was getting called up, I was getting to go on SmackDown. WWE had written I think it was 6 superstars, no, 5 of us. And they sent us an email and they were like, hey guys, we're flying you to Houston to do a dark match. Now a dark match is a match that is just done for the local crowd. It's not on TV.
Okay.
So they're called dark because it's not televised.
Right, but it's just the people in the arena see it, obviously.
Right.
Okay.
And I had just changed my email address with WWE, so I actually didn't get the email. My friend had to tell me about it, and she was like, "Hey, did you see that we're going to Houston?" And I was like, "No." She's like, "You're on this list." I'm like, "Are you sure it's me? Because I didn't get no such email." So it was me, thank God. And we went to Houston, and we debuted on Tuesday, and we found out Monday night what was happening. We found out Monday night that we were part of the Riott Squad, and we were doing all this on Tuesday. Now, me, Liv, and Ruby had never, in any fashion, been together in a tag team sense, ever.
Okay.
So they were kind of like WWE will give you amazing opportunities, and it's your job to make the best of them. So we're like, we can't drop the ball on this. We have to run with this. And it was kind of like a fake it till we make it thing until we got comfortable with it. Our entrance, they were like, do your guys' entrance together. And we're like, we don't really know each other. We don't. So it was legit just I hope this goes well every day, ever.
So with all that, how nervous are you?
So I guess with all kinds of wrestling, that I've ever been experienced, I've ever been I've ever been a part of, you're nervous until it happens for me. So when I'm about to go out to do my entrance, I'm nervous. Kind of in my entrance, I'm nervous. But once I circle up with someone in a wrestling ring, it's back to riding a bike. It's where I'm supposed to be. It's what I'm supposed to be doing. And I'll get nervous up until it's happening. And then I get into kind of that flow state where I'm using those nerves, and I'm using that the insecurities and all the stuff that comes with not knowing if you're good enough. And I show the world why I was chosen to do this. And I love doing that I love being able to do that as much as I'm able to do it.
So when you're in a WWE match, or you're on SmackDown or whatever it is, Raw or whatever event you're on, remember earlier when you talked about, understanding the variables of, what goes on, whether they're hurt, you're hurt, and how things develop, and the improv to a wrestling match. Is it different at that level because everyone is at the highest level in the professional, or is there some sense of, knowledge of what to do when X happens, what to do when Y happens, so to speak?
So I guess the only difference is the professionalism is above and beyond. Like, you're wrestling with the best in the world.
Right.
But it's a live TV show, and times have to be met.
Gotcha.
Right? So we'll have 10 minutes for a match. We're like, awesome. Well, what's the story we're going to tell? Awesome, awesome, awesome. We'll get in the ring, and they're like, just kidding, you have 4 minutes.
Wow.
So you have to cut 6 minutes of content and still look like, like a superstar. Don't look rushed, don't look nothing. So like so on the independence, you couldn't tell me how long my match was. My match was over when it was over, But if WWE wants your match 10 minutes, 6 minutes, 2 minutes, 30 seconds, that's what you're going to give them because that's your job. And they pay you to do that job. So I guess that's the only like real difference is having to be able to tell as good as of a story, if not a better one, when times are, because sometimes the opposite happens. You'll get in there and they're like, you have 3 minutes at it. So it just all depends on what's going on. But the level of the level of not content, but the level of talent on the WWE roster is it's comforting to know that like I am in the ring with professionals, and we can get what we need to get done. No matter what, I always tell myself before I go out and do a match, I'm like, I'm going to go out here, I'm going to forget something or something's going to go wrong, but it's okay because I'm a wrestler and I can fix it.
So
walk out.
You just competed in WrestleMania 35, correct? Back in April?
Yeah, and like I had this awesome WrestleMania moment where I was the only one in the ring. It was insane.
What's that like?
It honestly was. So like if do you have any children or like a dog or,
yes,
or something like that?
I have twin boys.
Okay, so like if you're gone for a extended period of time and you first open that door and your kids hug you,
Yep.
That level of happy you are, that's how happy I was.
Oh.
Like a lot of people are like, man, I can't imagine being that happy. I'm like, but you can. Like you can only get so happy, I'm like, something that makes you really happy is as happy as I was. Like, you feel this, I promise. Like, you can relate to me, I promise.
Wow. That's a pretty appropriate analogy. So let me ask you, when you have worked as hard as you have to get to where you are, and then somebody like Ronda Rousey comes along, and granted, she had an amazing career in the UFC, but gets to slide right into the top. Not that there's animosity per se, but I mean, what is that like when, somebody else gets to kind of cut the line, so to speak?
So, I always have to remember that, like, WWE is sports entertainment, right?
Right.
It is it's TV, and my happiness at WWE, like, doesn't stem from necessarily like how I'm being used or who's getting opportunities that I'm not. Like,
sure.
I'm big on like if that was meant for me, I'd be doing it and rocking it, And I'm so happy, like inside, like I have a wonderful home, I have a wonderful husband, like I'm doing my dream job, and like unless I get like fired from WWE, like I'm not going to be sad about where I'm at. Like if I ever lose perspective of that, like shame on me. Like,
that's a healthy way to look
Ronda
at it.
Bring,
That's pretty good.
Right. Like Ronda helped bring a whole new set of eyes into WWE. Wrestling Ronda, her look on. So like if I wrestle another wrestler, we're gonna have like our languages are the same. But you bring in someone who is from that like UFC background, her language is different. So to to talk story with her and to wrestle her is. I wrestle her in a way I don't wrestle other people, and that makes it funner to watch.
Interesting.
Like she would have ways to get out of my holds better. She would have, just like different stuff, and it was like a pleasure to wrestle her. It was a pleasure to, like, get to know her as like a person because I watched Ronda, on UFC, and I watched,
sure.
and I thought she was badass, and just as she's such a super like laid back and nice person, and her and Trav remind me of me and my husband. So like I feel like we like love the same, and she's also a person that's happy no matter what she's doing, because her home life is so happy. And I feel like that's such a beautiful thing to have in WWE. Like, I'm thankful that I have such a solid foundation that no matter what happens at work, I'll be okay.
It's pretty interesting.
I'll be
that,
happy regardless.
you know, all things considered, you know, I don't mean this as a pejorative, but, you know, you're married and fairly young and have a burgeoning career. What's it like being married, you know, with the job that you have?
My husband also works for WWE.
Well, I knew that, but it's, you know, sometimes married people, and then take it from me because I'm older, but, you know, sometimes married people, you know, get away from their spouse at work like it's a breath of fresh air sometimes.
Me and Ray, Eric from WWE,
Right.
we were best friends, and we indie wrestled together. So we would be on all these shows together. We would be on, we would travel together. We would do kind of everything together on the independents. And, like, I was there when he got his first, like, there's a company, like any bigger independent companies, like, we were there for each other when those things were happening. Like, when I got hired at NXT, he was there. When he got hired at NXT, I was there. When I got called up, you know, we were just kind of there for all of our big moments in life.
That's awesome.
And I guess him kind of being my best friend, like, when we're at work, we're more friends than, like, lovers, I guess, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Like, we're telling each other about each other's match. We're going over, like, what we're going to eat in catering today because we have to stick to our macros. We live together. Like, you know, I mean, we could bicker at each other sometimes, but you could walk up to anyone in WWE and anyone will tell you that I've never said one bad thing about him. Like, he's the best person I know. So, like, to be able to kind of be with him every day and kind of have him level me out, like I level him out, is an awesome thing that I like. I hope everyone, like, finds one day. I really do.
That's great. I don't know if you're a video game individual and like them or not, but apparently you are now a video game character.
Yeah, I'm crazy. So I worked at GameStop for
That's right. I'm sorry you did say that. I forgot. I'm sorry.
No, you're fine. Like, I used to sell those games, and now I'm in one. How crazy is that?
Have you seen yourself in the video game WWE 2K19? Have you actually seen yourself?
Yes,
Okay.
and I see myself with a big head in that game.
Do you like the way they portrayed you in the game? Like, do you physically look like you?
Yeah, it's crazy. Like, they do the scans and stuff they do. Like, they do the same scans for us as they do for, like, the NBA games.
Wow.
Because they're all, like, 2K games, you know?
Uh-huh.
So, like, you stand in this booth and there's 100, like state-of-the-art cameras in there and catching every facial expression, so, like, when I saw this thing, I was like, holy shit, that's me. That's crazy. Like, my little nieces and nephews get to play their aunt on, like, a video game, and my brother, he doesn't work at GameStop anymore. When I first got the video game come out, I was like, you have to tell me.
That's funny. So what's next in your wrestling career? Like, do you know yet, like, what the, you know, apex is for you? I mean, do you have your sights set on a championship? I mean, I assume you do, but is any of that in your control or no?
So I was with the Riott Squad for my entirety of my WWE career. And we recently, Liv got moved to SmackDown, and Ruby is out for, like, 6 to 8 months with shoulder surgeries.
Right.
So it's just kind of like me on Raw and Liz on SmackDown, and we're kind of, like, reinventing ourselves, like, without each other.
Okay.
Which I'm sure one day we'll find our way back to each other, because that seems to always happen. But I'm very interested to see how, like, I myself hold up on WWE television, like, where my character will go and who my character will feud with, and, like, I would love to be in, like, a championship role. I would love to be, even if that's the Raw Women's Championship or the Tag Team Championships or even the 24/7 Championship. Our truth's been holding, I think, pretty hostage. But yeah, like, the future is so, like, bright and so, like, moldable that I'm excited to kind of see where it takes off. They just did that big Super Showdown in Saudi Arabia, so like the slate is kind of clean now. Like all the storylines were finished, all the battles were had, and we're kind of doing like a clean slate. So normally every Monday you don't know what you're doing until that day and when it's happening.
Wow.
So I go to work every day not knowing what I'm doing.
You can never say you get bored that way, huh?
Yeah, I guess that's where like the professionalism comes in, because like you're given something and you just got to run with it. You know, it could be last minute, or you could be thinking you're doing something all day and it changes last minute. You do something better for better or for worse.
Incredible stuff.
So
well, Sarah,
to be tested.
Yeah, look, it's been an amazing journey. I mean, and it's really only the beginning. You're still so young. You're only 25 years old now, and you got the whole world in front of you. And I hope nothing but continued success for you. And as much as all your dreams have come true, I'm sure there's a couple more you got stashed away. I hope those come true for you as well. But it's just been a pleasure speaking with you.
Thank you, man. Thank you so much. I had a great time talking with you guys.
WWE superstar Sarah Logan, thanks for being part of the Kill Cliff podcast.
Of course. Thank you. Bye, guys.
WFOM
and W292 EV Marietta.
A Dickey broadcasting station.
Live from the Wellstar Health System Studios.
1230 and 106.3 FM. The Sports X.